Welcome back to the FloTrack podcast. Joining us on the show today is Chris Woods, head track coach at Mississippi State. He was part of a group of collegiate coaches from the state of Mississippi who went to the state legislature to lobby to replace the state flag that included the Confederate symbol. That effort was ultimately successful, with the governor signing a bill yesterday that calls for the flag to be changed. Chris, thank you very much for joining us. Can you give us a bit of some background on how the idea came about for the coaches to actually go to the state capitol last week and speak out about this issue?
Yeah, so this is something that's been sort of a hot button issue for this state for the past 20 years almost. 2001, the people of the state voted on the flag, and obviously they voted to keep the 1864 flag or 1894 flag, I forget, but they voted to keep it in place. And even when I was a student here, it was a hot button issue. Um, I think back in 2015, maybe the university stopped flying the state flag. I believe Ole Miss stopped flying their state flag as well. So it's been an issue, of a topic of discussion here for a while. Um, and, I think the mounting pressure from, the student athletes of the respective universities within the state speaking
Mhm.
out about the flag and what it means to them and how that symbol makes them feel. And then obviously all of the social injustices that are being brought to the forefront throughout the country certainly shed light on that symbol in our former state flag. And then we had a student athlete here. He spoke out and said that he wasn't going to participate in any competitions until the flag was removed. And obviously the SEC jumped on the board with that. The NCAA jumped on board with that. I believe there was another conference um, that's representing our conference, that's representing our state, got on board with that. And and so then it became a real issue that the legislators had to deal with face on, pretty much head on. And the idea just kind of came about. um, the ads got together, the athletic directors of the respective schools and the universities, they got together, and they thought it was important for several of the coaches on each respective staff to go down and speak their piece and talk about how the flag not only affects the university but affects the kids that we recruit, and it affects the kids that we have within our program. So it's been a long time coming, but it's not something that just popped up in the last
Mhm.
2 3 weeks. Like, this has been a discussion that's been going on for many years here in the state.
Were you surprised at the outcome at all, given how long it has taken?
Um, Going through the process, I was cautiously optimistic, if that makes sense. I wasn't necessarily surprised because there had been traction like I've never seen before with this thing. Even people, it's kind of twofold. You know what I'm saying? Because they voted on the flag in 2001. Well, it's 2020 now. You got a whole new generation of young people that have the availability, that have the options to vote now. They're 18 now.
Mhm.
Some of them 19, 18 years old, so they have the ability to vote. And times changed, things changed. It's a complete new generation from 2001. So there was real traction on the ground, and I have never seen it like that. And that's what led me to be extremely optimistic about it. But you never. I wasn't going to be surprised either way. Like, I was optimistic, of course, because I felt like that's something that this state needed, because that flag doesn't truly represent um, the reality of Mississippi. It put off a negative perception. And so it's something that needed to be done. I was cautiously optimistic, but I wasn't going to be shocked either way. I was certainly happy about it. Like, it was a very emotional day for me personally. I've been involved or lived in this state for 14 years now. When you combine my my time here in college, so it was certainly an emotional day for me. It was a proud day for me when the legislators voted to explore changing the flag.
When you viewed the flag in the past or recently, what emotions or thoughts came to your head? What did it make you think of?
Oh man, that's heavy. So I grew up in the South, man, and there's always been those symbols floating around. There's several other states right now that still have Confederate um, symbols in them. They're just not as prevalent as what the Mississippi flag used to have. So I grew up, um, surrounded by those things. Anybody does that grows up in the South, right? Like, and so when I saw the flag personally, or saw that symbol, not necessarily the state flag of Mississippi, just that Confederate war banner or battle flag. When I saw that, there's a sense of fear that kind of runs through you from a young age. It's a sense of fear, right? Like, because you don't really understand why somebody doesn't like you because of the way that you look, and you've never had any dealings with them, right? And then as you get older, that kind of turns into frustration, not necessarily anger, but frustration, because you don't understand why somebody doesn't like you simply because of the way that you look. They have no idea about the character of the person that you are. And then you move on, and I have two younger boys now, and that's when the fear sets back in that, man, there's going to be people out there that's not going to like my little boys just because of the way that they look, because of the color of their skin, and it has nothing to do with the character, the content of the character. And then you get into coaching, and now I have a team of men and women combined of about 100 kids, plus or minus 5 or 10, and we have a really diverse team with kids from all over the country, kids from all over the world, student athletes from all different types of backgrounds, and so then you worry for them as well, because again, there's going to be people that doesn't like them, almost disdains them simply because of the color of their skin. So when I saw that battle flag, it was really a fearful thing. And then that fear kind of manifested into frustration, not necessarily anger, but frustration, because you get defensive when you see that, because we all know the meaning behind that, the true meaning behind that, and what it represents. And that's why I felt like it was important that we needed to get that symbol out of our state flag.
When symbols like the flag are changed or when statues are knocked down, it has the air of suggesting and showing that changes are being made. But I wonder, for you, does this feel like racial progress? And if so, what else can be done to continue these steps that maybe a cynic can't just point to and say, well, that's just symbolism,
Yeah.
is anything actually going to change? So I guess that question is, is this real progress?
Well, I will say this, and I've had this conversation with several of my colleagues. Um, there has been real progress in the state of Mississippi for years now. Years. Mississippi has this negative perception about it, like, oh man, it's so racist down there. Oh man, it's this, and people build it up and build it up to make it this really um, just terrible place. And once you come and visit and you see things for yourself, you'll realize that this is probably the most hospitable place that you've ever been. I lived in several different places in my life. I coached at several different universities. I obviously went to school here, and I try not to be biased. I really try not to be biased. That's hard to do, right? When you love your university so much. Um, but to answer your question, the change has been happening for many, many, many years in Mississippi. Now, I think removing this symbol out of our flag and getting a new flag further drives home the reality that Mississippi is a place of diversity, it's a place of love, it's a place of inclusion, and it's not the perception of what that symbol in the flag means. I hope that makes sense. But so the answer, like, man, the change has been happening. It's not like it just happened this past weekend and everything is going to be fine. I think this weekend really solidifies the fact that the change has been happening. But just like anywhere else in the country, there's still a lot of work to do in regards to racial equality.
You brought up Kylan Hill earlier, the Mississippi State running back who said he was not going to play until the flag was changed. And I think that's when this really got on the radar of people who follow this, especially sports
Mm-hmm.
people, and also the SEC saying we're not going to host championships in the state until the flag is changed. Was there any sentiment among your team, and I don't know how much contact that you're having with them because we are in the time of a pandemic, of taking
Yeah.
actions similar to Kylan Hills?
Well, of course there were. I commend the young brother Colin Hill to really step out in front of that, and that was a very courageous thing to do and say. Uh, I talked to several of the kids on our team, and they want to speak out, and it wasn't just necessarily about the flag. Taking the flag down was kind of a symbol of saying, "Hey, we want racial equality," and so the way that I explained it to the kids on our team is like, man, we cannot. It's going to be hard for us to change the world, right? Like we're a track and field team. I'm just Coach Woods. It's hard for us to change the world, but what we can do is we can change the environment that's around us, and taking that flag down and lobbying to take that flag down, and the kids standing up and standing in solidarity with Colin and expressing the things that they want to do. I think it's our way of saying this is us changing our environment, and we hope that that bleeds out throughout the state, and we hope that what bleeds out into the state bleeds out into the country, and from the country it bleeds out into the world. So uh, you know as far as not wanting to compete in the fall or in the spring if the flag didn't change, we did not have that conversation. But our program is still looking at things that we can do to further drive the narrative home of we want racial equality, we want social justice for the minorities here in this country, and we're still thinking of ways to where we can drive our message and put our message out from a program standpoint, because this thing is such a what's been going on the last 2 or 3 months is just, it's really incredible, right? Like certainly there's been tragic events that led to this
Mhm.
moment, these moments that we're currently living in, but I think it's really, really important to not just let this moment die. We have to continue to educate our peers. We have to continue to drive the point home that racial equality is important. Social injustice is unacceptable. And so we cannot just talk about it for the immediate 2 or 3 months after an incident's happened and then says, okay, well, we protested, we talked about it, we spoke out about it, let's get back to our regular lives. Right? We have to continue to drive this message home. And we get in this track and field program, our plan is to use our platform to continue to drive that message.
Mhm. It's interesting because you mentioned, well, what can we do? We're just a track and field program, but you're part of Mississippi State, and every track and field program is part of a larger university and an institution, and with that does come some element of influence. And it feels like now athletes on college campuses, could be the smallest sport, could be the biggest sport, are starting to
Mm-hmm.
see what sort of influence that they can have. And 6 months ago, it didn't feel like that was the case. It felt like people were a bit, and there are obviously are some exceptions, but it felt like people were a bit more guarded, and that there was a power imbalance in the university. Do you feel that changing, that students are starting to feel now, and coaches, I guess, from that respect too, because you're seeing more coaches directly speak out and say how they feel. Is that a palpable feeling for you right now in this moment?
I think I think the student athletes are certainly starting to understand that they have platforms and
Hmm.
they have the right to speak out. what I've been encouraging our student athletes here in our track and field program to, like, listen, if you have an issue, if you want to speak out, you certainly need to speak out. But before you speak out, you need to make sure that you educate yourself on the topic that you're speaking out about, and make sure that your message is intelligently delivered. So I think they're really starting to understand, like, hey, we have a platform, and collectively we can use this platform to drive home what messages that we feel like is important to us. From a coaching standpoint, I really think coaches are starting to understand that too. Like, we have social media platforms, we have a voice, and at the end of the day, right is right and wrong is wrong. And as coaches, I feel like it's our duty to make sure that we um, lead our kids to be on the right side of history, like even beyond getting them faster, getting them stronger, making them throw further, or run faster, or jump further, or jump higher. It's our duty as coaches to help develop them into successful young men and young women, because in the next 20 or 30 years, they're going to be our leaders. And we
Mhm.
need to make sure that we educate them and give them the platforms, and show them how to intelligently use their platforms effectively.
I know a few weeks ago you put out a lengthy statement on your Twitter talking about your first experience as a child with
Yeah.
racism, obviously in response to, well, the George Floyd killing and the protests going on. I'm curious what conversations with your kids, and I know they're very young, as you mentioned there, but what conversations you've had about what you just went and did, lobbying the state legislative legislator to change the flag. Did you talk with your kids about what dad's doing and why it's important?
Yeah, so I want to talk about the letter real quick to answer that question. And yeah, I did mention an incident that I had, right, personally. But what was important to me, the message that I was trying to deliver within my letter was, it was more so of a challenge to other coaches and other parents and other people that were in positions of leadership. What message are you going to instill in your kids? Because when I had that incident, I was 6 years old, when my then 6 year old teammate called me a racial slur. It wasn't until I got much older where I realized, oh no, that behavior is taught. So my letter was more so of a challenge to other coaches, other parents, aunties, uncles, older brothers, all the people that are in positions of leadership. What messages and what things are you teaching and instilling in the people that you are leading? That was more so the point of my letter. Now, to answer your question about my younger boy, so I got a 2 year old, and my 2 year
Yeah.
old, he just kind of runs around and gets into things, and snatches trash out of the trash can every once in a while, and doing things that 2 year olds do. My oldest is 7, and he doesn't quite understand what's going on. He understood that what daddy was doing was important because daddy had a suit on, and he rarely ever wears suits, right? So he's like, oh, you must be doing something. you know so he understood that whatever it was I was doing was important. However, I don't think he understands why it's important yet. And I it's and what's going to be critical is I made sure I picked the times to explain to him why it was important. It may be a year or two away from now. He may need to grow a little bit more and have a couple of more life experiences before we have that conversation, so that he can really understand why it was important. But he understand that change is going to happen. Like, he was jumping up and down when the vote came. Like, we're literally watching a 7 year old watching the Senate floor live. Like, I watched the votes live, and he's sitting there watching it with me on the computer. Like, what does that mean? Like, what does yay mean? What does nay mean? And having to explain it to him. And to be honest with you, I had to really do some research and educate myself as well as to what was happening, and how many votes were needed, and who voted which way. And so he doesn't understand that stuff, but he understands that something is important happening. Something important is happening. He just doesn't understand why it's important.
I read on your coach bio on the Mississippi State website that when you were hired as the full time or as the head coach, that was one of the happiest days of your life. How did this moment kind of compare as far as things that have a lasting impact on you?
I mean, you talking about the lobbying, like going to the Capitol and talking to Speaker of the House and Lieutenant Governor. That's a day I'll never forget. Um, it's like, man, when you get into coaching, uh, your focus is winning champ. When you're young and you get into coaching, you want to recruit, you want to get people better, and you want to pursue a championship. Like that's the whole reason why we get into this thing, right? Like we're really competitive people, and I still haven't lost sight of those things. Like those are really important. Like here at Mississippi State, our goal is to win a championship. Like, that's what we're going to do. Along the way, you get these different experiences. Sometimes it's a travel experience. Um, in this instance, for me, it was going down to the state capitol and lobbying for something that I really truly believe in strongly that needed to happen that I think could better the state. So, in that regard, it's a day that I'll never forget. I never thought that I would be speaking to the Speaker of the House or the Lieutenant Governor or the chair, speaking to these political figures about something that I personally feel strong about and lobbying to get that changed. And then it goes on and to happen. Now, it was certainly a team effort. Now, like, I want to make it understood. Like Chris Woods did not go down there and get the flag changed.
Yeah, yeah.
But there was a collective effort, and I'm so proud to be a part of that, be directly a part of that collective effort that will lead to a positive change and continue a positive change in the state of Mississippi.
How often did this come up in recruiting in years past? Because I heard several coaches
Every year,
mention that.
every single year, every single year, I'm gonna have a student athlete. Coach Woods, I love you, man. I love you. And if you was at any other place, I will be coming there. But I just can't go to school there in Mississippi. And it's hard not to take that, not necessarily personally, but you take it kind of hard, because you get to know these families, you get to know the young student athletes. You guys really develop a connection. They believe in your coaching philosophy. They truly believe that you can get them better. They truly believe, the parents truly believe that you will lead them to graduation and walking across the stage and lead them to, compete to make Olympic teams and all of these things. Like they truly believe it in their hearts, but they end up not coming simply because of a perception, not even a reality. They end up not coming over a perception, and it's disheartening sometimes because it's those are things that are out of your control. We work hard down here. We work hard. We recruit hard. We're a staff of um, we're a staff of people that really truly cares about the student athletes and not just about the athletic performance. Does that make sense? We really care about the persons and the people that we are recruiting, not necessarily, not so much about, oh, they can jump far, they can run fast, or they can throw this. We truly care about the student athletes that come through our program, and it would be frustrating when somebody tell you they just can't go to school in Mississippi. And I think changing the flag will certainly, or has certainly changed the perception. And now we can begin to shed light on the reality of what this state truly is. And like I said, it's a diverse state. Like Mississippi State's one of the most diverse Power Five schools in the country.
Mhm.
I think our African American enrollment is right around 25% or so, or maybe even a little bit higher than that. So I mean, even the university, the state has one of the highest populations of African Americans than any other state in the country. And so those are the realities, those are the facts. But the perception is, oh, Mississippi's this, it's really negative. And that's why I feel like changing the flag, that something that can truly represent the state is it's going to prove to be a positive thing, not just for Mississippi State University, but for all the universities in our state. It's going to prove to be a positive thing for businesses in this state, the people in this state, and how our state is viewed throughout the country. I want to say, I want to add to that, but there's still work to be done. Just like there is work to be done anywhere else in the country.
Mhm. When you were a student there, which you're a pretty young guy. So it wasn't too long
Thanks.
ago. Yeah, well,
Thank you.
it, it's humbling for me when I find out a Power Five coach is younger than I am. So Facebook was around. I don't think Twitter was there yet. But did you feel like you had a platform when you were attending school there? Did you feel like
Mm,
you could affect change when you were
mm.
an athlete at Mississippi State?
Wow, I've never thought about that. Didn't know what a platform was, to be honest with you. Um, I certainly during my time here felt comfortable, right? If I had an issue with something, I felt like I had a support system here. I was certainly nervous to come to school here, as was my mother, but so is any college freshman. It doesn't matter where they're going to school; they're going away from home for the first time. So I was certainly nervous, right? But I didn't know what a platform was. Like, yeah, we just like Facebook was. I think Facebook came out the spring of 2004, fall of 2004, somewhere like that. Fall of
Yep.
2004 was my freshman year, so that thing was just now starting to really pick up, and then make you we can feel really old and talk about MySpace. Like, we had those type of we had those type of um social media websites at the time, because even the smartphone was the BlackBerry, so it wasn't Instagram and Twitter.
Do you have a
So I never
sidekick?
thought about, did I have a sidekick? No, I did not have a sidekick. I
You
had
remember
a
those, though, right?
yeah, the
Yeah.
flip. I had a razor. I thought I
Oh,
was pop because I had a razor.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, I didn't realize what a platform was. Like, we're just now talking about platforms within the last two or
hmm
3 years. So I will say, when I was in school here, I felt like I had a support system, and if I needed to speak out about something, I certainly had a support system that would have my back um, in doing so.
Switching gears just a little bit and to talk about track. I
Yeah.
know we haven't had track season this year. You mentioned your goal is to win a national championship, as is any program, of course. But Mississippi State has had some years where it's been obviously very competitive at the national stage. But to take that next step, what are the keys for your program?
Um, consistency, consistency in recruiting. Um, that's the main thing. Consistency in recruiting, finding our areas that we are strong in, continue to build those cornerstones of the program, and solidify them. Like, pour that foundation on where it's strong. Pour that foundation on, and then from there we can start to build out in different areas of different event groups within the program. So consistency in recruiting is one of the main factors that I think about in long term success, and I strongly believe, I've always believed, the most important thing in any type of successful program is the coaches in the program have to dedicate themselves to developing the young student athletes that they're able to recruit and successfully sign and bring into their program. A lot of universities, and I don't want to say a lot, but you certainly have those programs where they only rely on the talent that they recruit, and they just want that talent to go and perform. Well, here, I think it's important to, yes, you want to recruit the talent, but just recruiting the talent and getting them here is not good enough. We have to dedicate ourselves to learning our craft. I don't care how long you've been in coaching, there's always something to learn. We have to dedicate ourselves to the development, the individual development of all of our student athletes here. So, recruiting and development, to answer your question.
And obviously, this whole thing changing the flag is much more important than the perception of the state for recruits. This is tremendously larger than that. But I'm wondering if you think this will have any direct impact to the athletes you're going to be able to recruit.
100%. Again, because it tears down that it tears down the negative perception a little bit. Does it completely remove it? Absolutely not. Like there's still going to be people that's going to be a little bit apprehensive, but now there's going to be another group of people that's like, man, there's real change going on down there. They have minority leadership in that track and field program down there. I feel comfortable sending my son or sending my daughter to that program because I have confidence in Coach Woods and his staff that they are going to develop my child not only into being a successful student athlete, but they're going to focus on developing my child into being a successful young man or young woman. So I certainly think the changing the flag is it's a symbol of changing the perception and shedding a light, a real light, a glaring light on the reality of the hospitable state. I mean, we're the hospitality state, you know, and I think changing the flag is really going to allow us to shed light on those things.
Chris Woods, head coach at Mississippi State. Thank you so much for your time. Stay safe amidst the pandemic, and best of luck to you and your team this year.
Thank you guys so much. Stay safe. Hail State. We'll see you guys down the road.
Bye.
All right. That was Chris Woods, Mississippi State head coach. And Lincoln, it's been very, very encouraging to see just the role that college coaches and college athletes are having at this time. You see it throughout the country, just how involved and active they're getting. And the whole idea of like, hey, if you support me when I'm playing sports for your team, then you also need to support me as an individual during these other pursuits, right? I mean, it's not a large ask, but I think it's forcing some conversations and some issues to the table that need to be had. And obviously with this situation here, it just goes to show you the what can happen. Now, this wasn't, again, like you said, this wasn't just a thing that happened last week or last month. It's been building on years and years of work, but it is engaging young people in the times that we're in right now.
Yeah, and I think, you touched on an important topic, the importance of a platform, thinking of Kylan Hill, and obviously this was all preceded by the events of, the killing of George Floyd and the racial protest, the Black Lives Matter movement. But his coming out, Kylan Hill, the football player from Mississippi State, and saying, I don't want to play if I'm playing under that flag, obviously had a tremendous impact, and it's going to have impact hopefully for generations to come. I mean, as a white man, I can't even imagine what looking at the Confederate flag every day is like. And I know that flag angers me. So I can imagine being in the shoes, being an African-American, being a minority, and looking at that flag and knowing truly what it means. And so how powerful is that to get that removed? And especially when, the country is, you hate to say that things have to get really bad before they can get better, but it kind of feels like that. I mean, there's been so much ugliness in this country the last few years, and particularly this year. But if those things lead to situations where change is brought on, well, then it's productive to have these conversations. So it's really just cool to see, watching the videos from the coaches, Mississippi State coaches in the legislature, gave me chills. It was incredibly inspiring to see what this community was able to do when they rallied together.
Yeah, we should say across the board too. Coaches from Ole Miss was there, and a bunch of other universities in the state were there. And then it got passed and then signed by the governor. It happened relatively quickly, at least in terms of how the speed of politics usually operates within our country. So again, big thanks to Coach Chris Woods down there in Mississippi. We're going to switch gears now, Lincoln, and talk about some results, some actual results from an actual meet. And these are big times here. These are big times that the Bowerman Track Club turned in here at Jesuit High School last night in Portland. It was a purely time trial meet, right? We did not, there was 4 events, 1500s and 5000s. That was it. I'll start first with this headline here. Elise Cranny, Lincoln,
Mm-hmm.
runs 14:48, moves her to number 7 all time on the U.S. 5,000 meter list, and gives
Yes.
Bowerman another threat to make the Olympic team next year. The rich just seem to get richer here,
Mm-hmm.
and what a performance! That's just 3 seconds off what Carissa Schweizer did in Doha last year, and just a little bit faster than what Vanessa Frazier ran indoors in Boston. In the same race last night, Courtney Frerichs, the steepler, goes 14:50. That's number 9 all time. And Colleen Quigley and Gwen Jorgensen went 15:10 and 15:18. But Cranny, she takes her PR from 15:25 to 14:48.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's made more gains, it seems like, in this quarantine period as far as track and field athletes than perhaps Elise Cranny, like what she showed last night. I know we don't have the video, but she may have just solidly, if it wasn't established before, moved herself from the 1500 up to the 5K, and adding her name to an event that just seems to keep picking up stars. Now all of a sudden a distance that we would have called as recently as last year called a weakness for the US is, it's not the women's 1500 yet, but it's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming up to be a strength when you talk about Schweizer, El Purrier. I know Frazier's not healthy right now, but she ran 14:48 not too long ago, and then Cranny and Frerichs obviously won't run the distance at the championship level, but for Cranny, I mean, you're right. She was the headline last night, not only for the huge PR, but the fact that it came in a distance that we're not accustomed to her running. She's been a 1500 meter runner previously. As a statement run from her.
Yeah. And I think what we're seeing, because you look at the men's 5,000 meter results as well, too. McGorty, 13:11. That's a big PR, takes 10 seconds off. And then Grant Fisher, 13:11 as well. His previous personal best was 13:29. So the breakthrough, I think everybody thought Grant Fisher was capable of. Like 13:29 was not indicative of Grant Fisher's potential. Now he has a time in line with that. But they got a very good assist again for, I'm calling him, I mean, he's a great runner, obviously in his own right. He's a medalist, but Mohamed, man, Mohamed is getting assists out there, a la Jason Kidd in his prime. Now, remember, Mohamed is the one who set the table for the Woody Kincaid sub 13 and the Centro and Lamong almost sub 13 from last year. Well, last night, he goes through 4,200. He takes this field through 4,200, and then McGorty takes it from there, and he closes in 55. In the women's race, Schweizer and Houlihan, they went, their last split was 3,800. Again, we haven't seen the video, so maybe they went to 4K. I think what we're seeing with this is two things. One, they're obviously in incredible shape. But two, just the benefit of having a high quality rabbit all the way through and sometimes a bit past 4 kilometers. It's one thing to go to a Diamond League and get somebody to 3K with weird splits. It's far different for a teammate to take you basically all the way to 2 laps to go and then say, take it from here.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we know even in our limited experience in track and field, the running the 5,000 from 3 to 4K can really hurt. And you're still thinking, I've got a long way to go. So having somebody in front of you that's still able to click off those splits, so having the Mohamed, who's a bronze medalist in the 5,000, makes things quite a bit easier. That said, maybe not quite as impressive as the women in the 5,000, but as you mentioned, McGorty and Fisher, I guess
the
overall,
young guys.
Yeah, it was a nice day for Stanford alums in this Bowerman time trial situation. Kind of have to remember that these two guys are players in the 5,000. I know Chalimo, I know Lamong and Kincaid, if he's healthy. Those guys were the top 3 last year, and there's other guys who have more experience. But 13:11, especially when there's been no season, and they beat Evan Jager and let's see who else was it, Ryan Hill.
Yeah.
Like, you just because these guys are 22, 23, can't forget that these are potential Olympians as well. And McGorty, the limited appearances he's made as a Bowerman athlete, he's been really, really strong. I don't think he ran at USA's last year, and neither did Fisher. So you kind of right now are thinking, those guys are a couple years off. I seems like they're going to be ready to go next year and being right there in contention with, the kind of the fringe guys like Jenkins, like Drew Hunter. It's going to be a tough team to make, but these guys are certainly now elevated as far as the pecking order is concerned.
Well, you have to like McGorty, especially because of his closing speed. His 1,500 meter speed is top notch. We saw that in his first year as a pro. Sneaky good performance here, I think, from Jaeger. 13-12 doesn't get the win, but was off all last year because of injury. Yeah. So to come right back in and run 13-11 or 13-12 is really good. Hill right there at 13-15. So the young guys led the way, but those are for a year where there's no championships. I think they're fine. They're fine where they're at. Going back to Cranny, you brought up 1,500 5K. Obviously, I think it has to be 5K. And last year was her first year as a pro, and she made the finals in both at USA's, ran in the 1520s in the 5,000, which was fine. But any idea that she was going to settle into that tier is now gone, right? She is now a threat. And now the question with all of these runners, all these Stanford alums here, is translating it to a championship setting, or translating it to a non-trial non-time trial setting, right? Same thing with Woody Kincaid in a way, right? We really haven't seen, since that race, because it was so late in 2019 and then 2020 was essentially scrapped. We really haven't seen him in a big time race yet. You could even say the same thing about Frazier, right? Like, we haven't seen it in a big time race yet. Schweizer ran that fast 3,000 in Boston, but several months prior, we saw what she did in Doha in back-to-back rounds, drop her PR. So she's done it on the big stage. But you do want to see, hey, can you do it outside of a controlled time trial setting?
Yeah, and I guess with the development of Josh Thompson, and you mentioned Schweizer, just the team overall, the established athletes have obviously done the work for the team to build up their reputation, but you see some of these athletes that we thought of as stragglers and who maybe weren't at that level. Now they're starting to rise up. Like I mentioned with Thompson, Kincaid, there's other names there. And obviously with these performances by the former Stanford athletes, you can no longer think of them as being leaps and bounds behind the Schweizers and Hoolahans and the Quigleys. They're coming up to that level, and it makes sense. They were just as good in college, and now they haven't had the chance to necessarily show it as young pros in races, just because of maybe they turned pro last year and didn't get a full season. And then now, obviously, with no track going on, you forget how good these athletes were, like Fisher, McGorty, and Cranny, how good they were in college. And it's also encouraging for Cranny. She was a high school phenom. And a lot of times, these high school female phenoms, specifically on the female side, have issues with the career longevity. And for her to go through Stanford and have a strong career and then still be on the up, that's a testament to her as an athlete, because I just know how difficult it is to be that good in high school, to be that good in college, and to stay on a track towards progression for someone of her ability. So it was a big day for her.
Yeah, it certainly reorders some things if you're trying to make 1 year out projections on who makes the team, because it just adds another name in there. Because you can't discount someone who's run 14:48. It's not a guarantee that they're going to make a team, but you cannot discount somebody who has that ability. And especially looking way far ahead to those trials, if Bowerman has critical mass in that final in Eugene, they could set the tone for the race. They could dictate exactly how they want the race to go. Now, maybe they won't do that, but if you have 3 people on your team that have run 14:48 or faster, I would think you'd want a quick race, because the list of people who could stick with that is very small. And it is exciting for the U.S. women's 5K, a nut that has not been able to be cracked at the international level yet.
I mean, the 5K on the women's side just be ridiculous. It almost has like a Diamond League type feel with the types of PRs that are in there. You mentioned the 5,000, but El Purrier in her 4:16 mile, you think she's going to be in the 5,000 in some way. If Houlihan decides to also do the 5K, as she, at least at the trials, she obviously is the record holder, U.S. record holder at 1,500 and 5,000. Krista Schweizer in her 14:45 and a 8:25 3K. I mean, these are ridiculous times. The Bowerman Track Club continues to I always thought they would get so good that this would become routine, but they still pleasantly surprise me because they bring on these new athletes and they always elevate them. I think Jerry Schumacher gets enough credit, but he's still finding ways to outdo himself. Obviously, the credit needs to go to the athletes. They're doing the work, but this group, they are obviously one of the best in the world.
Well, there's always a little bit of a head fake, right? The first year doesn't go perfect. And then instead of a sophomore slump, there's a sophomore breakout, like we're seeing with Cranny and perhaps with some of the other runners here. 1,500. They had some 1,500s too, Lincoln. Although, from what it looks like on the results, no rabbits, which is a tough break for the 1,500 meter runners. They served themselves as rabbits for the 5,000, but they didn't have any. And just looking at the splits, it looked like in both the men's and women's races, they traded off the lead. And Shelby Houlihan got the win 4:02.37, Schweizer 4:02.81. That's a PR for Schweizer. But Shelby gets the win after last time Schweizer beating her in that 3,000.
Yeah, a little bit of an answer back. Obviously, with no video coverage, it's tough to get that full, to have that moment on the internet cycling over and over again. I'm sure Shelby would take that 3K win back in Boston and trade it for this one. But 4:02 and coming off a long break is a pretty good time. Yeah, I mean, that's when you've run 3:54, it's easy to look at that and be like, whatever. But then you're like, that's a 4:02, basically, season debut in a non-season with like you said, a solo effort. So very, very impressive. And Schweizer just another step forward. Yeah.
I mean, I guess you have to. She's leading at least half of the race. I mean, I haven't seen the video, but again, you just look at those splits because then the men's side of things between Thompson, Lamong, and Ahmed, they each took a turn being first, and I thought, well, that would be a weird coincidence. I think perhaps that there was some planning there because they all ran 3:39. Thompson wins it 3:39.66, same time as Lamong. Actually, sorry, Thompson wins it 3:39.652 to Lamong's 3:39.660, and then Mohamed was there 3:39.84. So a trio of 3:39s there.
That would have been a fun finish to watch.
Hopefully they get the video up.
Hoping the video.
It's hard. Yeah. It's really hard to get a 1,500 right without a pacer, or even with a pacer. It's so hard to get it right. It was the 5,000 is for whatever reason, a much easier race to control. At least I think so.
And I guess Centro couldn't be bothered to get off the Call of Duty couch to come pace or run this 1,500. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know what's going on with them.
You got an Olympic gold medal. You can dictate. Well, there were some other people who scratched or didn't run at all. It wasn't universal. Not everybody was there. But hey, I'm not going to be greedy. This gave us something to talk about. This is pretty interesting. I did not see I didn't even know what events they were running because nobody knew what events they were running, and this was under the cover of darkness. I do think Craig Engels should have showed up to that 1,500 though. That'd have been fun.
That would have been. I would have been there for that. This happened after I went to bed. I know Gordon tweeted about it on the FloTrack account, and when I woke up this morning, it said 4 hours ago. And I woke up at like 6:30. So he tweeted about it at 2:30 in the morning. This man still needs to be working on his sleep habits. That's much too late in the day for me.
Don't worry. He won't wake up for at least 5 or 6 hours. So
yeah. I guess other time trial type news? Did you see Jakob Ingebrigtsen ran 146?
Yeah, 146, and then Statman John Mulkeen was putting up the all-time list of people who have that 10K 800 range,
Yeah.
and it's a select group. It's a small group, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. When I see 146, it's still, I don't know. I think of like Webb running 143, and I know Webb was a miler, not a predominantly a 5K guy, but I still don't. For whatever reason, unless someone's like 145, that's like the cutoff to me of Diamond League quality, elite quality. But I mean, that guy's ready to run. That guy should have been in this race. That'd have been fun.
That would have been so much fun. I think he would have dominated. Yeah, I have no doubt though that Ingebrigtsen could be a 144 or faster guy. When you look at Craig Ingles ran 144, and I know you'd think of Jakob Ingebrigtsen having a little bit more endurance than I guess necessarily raw speed. It's not like I'm calling him slow by any means, but I mean he's just doing this. I know his brother Philip was in this, but he's just doing all this basically by himself, and he's not even 20 yet. I mean,
talk about giving him keys to the stadium there.
Yeah.
Right. It's just
turning the extraordinary into routine. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's funny though. They're not doing these because he did this at the big stadium, right? At the Bislett Stadium again. That's what it looked like. I don't know if pictures
there. Yeah, it looked the same. Yeah, it did look the same, but I wasn't sure.
There's no small tracks in Oslo. There's only the biggest track. You can only work. You can only do your time trial with nobody in the stands there. It's the only place you can do it.
Well, Jakob Ingebrigtsen actually has keys to every building in the greater Oslo area. So he kind of carries around one of those janitor's keychains. He's just such a star over there.
Yeah. Until Carson Warholm rekeys it and doesn't tell him. So it's still my country.
Right. Right. Who is more popular over there? Is it Warholm? Is it Warholm or Jakob Ingebrigtsen?
We should ask.
To say, right?
We should ask.
That's a question that needs to be answered. Yeah.
To the Norwegian listeners, FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com. Jakob or Karsten? I would guess. Well,
I mean,
Jakob has the reality show and the brother thing, right? But Karsten has the 2 gold medals and slapping himself in the face. It's don't overlook that as an important marketing ploy.
Yeah.
What do you think they're going to run more? Do you think Bowerman's going to run more? It'll be so awesome if they run more this year than an actual year. It'd be amazing. They do like a series of 8 time trials.
Yeah.
Jerry's
they said
like, screw it.
Yeah. They said in a post that they may, look to do more competitions and maybe against actual competition. I think I read that. So we'll see. We'll see. I'd love to see some races on some more. I know this wasn't in the Nike, it wasn't on the Michael Johnson track, but I'd love to see a Pete Julian v Jerry Schumacher try to get that rivalry reestablished, or I guess established, and see the Portland group. That would be fun.
Did this make your list of match races you wanted to see?
Well, I mean,
BTC Julian. Did you have anybody on that from those groups?
That would.
Oh, you had Shelby versus Hassan, right?
Hassan in the 2K. I would love that. Yeah, Brazier versus anyone on BTC is not exactly going to be. I don't know who's going to volunteer as tribute for that one. Anybody got 142 speed?
Anybody?
Yeah.
The ghost of David Rudisha is here.
Yeah. So, but Ingles against Centrowitz, I'd love to see something like that. That'd be fun. Those guys are fun to watch.
Yeah, and then you could put Jenkins in the 5,000 against. It's not balanced. It's just BTC has so many people.
Yeah,
especially on the women's side of things. But
yeah.
I'm just excited that the women's 5,000 is going to become a very exciting event at the trials, and every event is exciting at the trials. Don't get me wrong, but with how many people were running it, doubling back from the 15 or doubling back from the 10,000, that you didn't know who was going to take what spot, and then ultimately the U.S. You never felt like, okay, this person's going to go and contend for a medal. right?
Of course, yeah.
And then that sort of changes things. It's like, well, if you make the team, you can get a medal, right? Like events like the high hurdles or something like that. It never had that feel to it, just because there has never been any medal at all, let alone
Mhm.
the fourth place person is going to be left out of a medal. But now you really feel like that, right?
Yeah.
You really feel like someone's going to get left off who has serious credentials, who we may not be to the point where they're going to be leaving off a medalist, but you're certainly leaving off a top eight
Finalist.
person
Yeah.
in the world. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. No.
And I wanted to see how these people run when it's not a time trial.
Yeah, I mean they've earned their stripes in other places, of course, but yeah, the new people, as you, or the youngsters of the Bowerman Track Club, still have to prove themselves in that regard, but they haven't really gotten the chance yet. But impressed with what Cranny and Fisher have done in such early days in their professional career, and training with arguably the best group in the world, has paid dividends. So they are certainly players in the
Olympics.
on the domestic
Trials.
stage. Sorry, yeah, the running team thing.
The world
Yeah.
running competition. Earth sports.
The only thing negative is she won't get an Olympic standard. That is Cranny. She won't get an Olympic standard off of this, right?
Why?
Well, they're not doing standards right
the
now.
window. Yeah.
The window. Yeah.
Yep.
So
yep,
I mean,
right.
but I think she'll be fine to. Yeah.
I thought you meant because it wasn't sanctioned. I was like, the officials were there, but
No, just
that is
the World Athletics.
That is interesting though, right? They took the time to get the officials and stuff out there to sanction it, so it'd be a sanctioned performance, but it's not going to count for USATF or World Athletics. Maybe contract wise, maybe
just to
I guess
it be
you could
recorded as their PR, I guess, maybe.
Well, yeah, right. Because if you go to because people were saying McGorty has the world lead in the 5K now, there is still a world list, and maybe if he ends the year number 1, there's a bonus attached to that. That could be it. Be smart.
That was a good play.
Is a 37-second PR in the 5,000 good? I'm new to running. Is that good?
I think it is.
Would you?
Yeah, I would say it's better than a 36-second PR and than not PRing. So especially for someone who had a full ride to what I assume was a full ride to Stanford and who got a professional contract, get PRing by 37 seconds is a very special moment, to be sure.
Yeah. So yeah, right now Henrik Ingebrigtsen has the world lead. Well, listed on here is 13:19, and then for was
that yesterday?
Yeah,
did he run that yesterday? Yeah.
Yeah. That was part of that.
Yeah.
It was Bislett Stadium, June 29th. Sorry, 2 days ago. It was a 2-day meet. They borrowed that track for 2 days. He had the keys for 2 days.
Wow.
Before Carson told him to leave. And the women right now, it's 15:06. Jessica Hull. So that will change immediately. So I guess that's why you do it.
Yep. Cool.
That is why you go out there and you get the officials there and you make sure it's a legit mark. So that way you can dominate the top 10 in 2020. I think we have a strong candidate for most improved in 2020. There's still a couple months left, but at least Cranny almost has it locked up.
Yeah. Good chance.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again to our guest, Chris Woods of Mississippi State. Thanks to Elon for producing. I will be back tomorrow Gordon will be back tomorrow with Lincoln. Again,
cool.
Here's your warning. Buckle up. Who knows what they're going to talk about?
Can't wait.
We will talk to you guys tomorrow.